Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody on social media know that the stream is getting ready to start. Okay, I'm going to get started with tonight's show. And before I get started with tonight's show, I'm going to go into a little perfunctory. Now, Halloween is getting ready to come up, and it's a great time to pick up some action packed SJS Direct horror. And my novel, Eternal Night, is available on Amazon.com right now, and you can pick up your own copy of this action packed African American vampire story. So I'm going to leave a link to Eternal Night on the chat, and you guys can go out here and pick up a copy. So you can pick up a copy of Eternal Night in paperback or Kindle format. And I also have some more hot horror on the SJS Direct imprint you guys can pick up, like Isis Bride of Dracula and Isis Escape from Transylvania. And I'm going to leave a link to those two books in, well, it's three actually. So Swing on Mobar 7170. Glad to see you here. And the third book in the vampire saga, Isis, Night of the Vampires. You can get all three of those books on Amazon right now in paperback and Kindle format. And you can pick up some of the newer titles on the SJS Direct imprint, such as 2021's Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, John Hanks Taking Care of Business, and Easteen Cancelication. All three of these books are on Amazon right now. You can get all of them in paperback and Kindle format, and they are all part of a theme for tonight. So I decided to do a comic related or fantasy related live stream tonight because everything has been real heavy on the streams as of late. So I decided to do a little bit of a lighter show. And tonight's show was inspired by a video by YouTuber Retroblasting that I saw a couple of weeks ago. Now, Retroblasting, usually he focuses on the 1980s cartoons and TV shows, and he focuses on the toys of the 1980s. A lot of them I actually own in my personal collection, like the Voltrons you see behind you. So I really like his channel, and one of the points he brought up in a video he did recently was he was talking about people being stewards over the lore of things like comic books, science fiction, and fantasy. And this was a point that I agreed with him with because this was something I dedicated my life to ever since I was a little boy. Now, back when I was 9 years old, I aspired to go out here and create my own comics because I was inspired by the comics in my brother's collection. He had an extensive collection of Marvel and DC comics, and I really loved all of those books in his collection. And as I was growing up, I used to watch things like the Transformers, G.I. Joe, Voltron, and many other 1980s cartoons because I grew up during the 80s. And I really loved a lot of those shows. And I understood what those characters really meant to people because I collected a lot of those toys. And this is my first run with some of these toys, like you can see in the back. That Voltron vehicle team in the back, that's the second one that I got from my family back in 1988. And the first one, I practically played with it until it fell apart. And these characters mean a lot to me. And I know that it means a lot to a lot of Gen Xers out there who grew up watching these cartoons back in the day and collecting all of those comics and watching shows like Star Trek and watching things like Star Wars. So I know that these characters, their history, and their lore mean a lot to people. So back when I was a kid and I wanted to, again, be in the comic book business. And when I was a teenager, I aspired to be a comic book writer. And the reason why I wanted to be a comic book writer was because I wanted to preserve these characters so that the next generation could see how great they were. And the reason why, again, I wanted to do that was because those characters meant a lot to me growing up, and they helped me get through a lot of hard times when I was a kid. And I wanted to preserve what was great about those characters. So that was one of the reasons why I practically studied everything about those characters and their stories growing up, because I wanted to be able to come into a company like a Marvel Comics or a DC Comics and be able to pick up where the previous writers left off, because I wanted to respect the work of those previous creators, and I wanted to preserve the history and integrity of those characters. Now, that was my whole passion when I was, again, a teenager, regarding these characters that I grew up with. Again, I wanted to be that person who preserved those characters' history and their stories and stay true to the spirit of who they are, and then be able to share them with the next generation of readers and next generation of viewers, because I understood how important these characters were to me. So I wanted to make sure that the kids of the next generation understood what made these characters special. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to break into the comic book business, and sadly, the people who have taken over things like the comic book business, the sci-fi business, and the fantasy business, they really have not been good stewards over these characters. They have not been good stewards over the history of these characters, and they have not really stayed true to the spirit of these characters, their history, or their lore. And that's the big problem what we're having these days that I agree with Retroblasting on, is we don't have any stewards over these characters. Now, to understand the concept of a steward, you really have to go back to the Bible. Now, in the Bible, God created an order for people to follow. And again, it goes like this: God, the creator of the universe, Jesus, his son, who reigns over the the earth. And then you have man, who is the being who is the steward over the earth, and the woman who is to be his helpmeet and the children. Now, the man, as a steward, has an important role, and that role is to be taking care of the earth, and he is accountable to Jesus and God. And that's where your comic fans really have to understand where it's important to be a steward, because a steward understands their role in the order of things. Now, a steward is somebody who understands, as related to comic books, science fiction, and fantasy, that they are accountable to people in the order. A steward understands they are, one, accountable to the bosses that they work for, and two, they are accountable to the fans that go out here and supported this lore. And they have to understand that when you're accountable to people, you want to make sure that you are continuing to maintain the integrity of these characters and maintain the integrity of their whole story. And when you're out here working on characters in things like comic books, science fiction, and fantasy, you want to make sure that as you are adding new stories to the lore, that they stay true to the core foundations of the source material. And we're not really seeing this in a lot of different characters and different stories. And that's why so many people are really frustrated as related to a lot of the new material that's out here. Because we have a lot of these people out here who are working in these mediums, and they're more about pushing their own personal agendas and not about going out here and presenting these characters in the way that we all who grew up with them knew them to be. Now, a good steward understands that these characters have a history, and there's a reason why these characters have resonated with readers and viewers for so many years. And the reason why these characters have resonated with readers and viewers for so many years is because we can see things in them that relate to us. So when we go out here and we see a character like Optimus Prime, we can relate to him being a leader. When we see a character like Batman, we can relate to him and his tragedy and his perseverance in the face of that tragedy to make sure that no other 8-year-old boy suffers what he suffered when he lost his parents. So all of these characters have integral traits that every viewer relates to and identifies with. And the whole reason why their stories are carried on from one generation to the next is because we see things that we relate to. Unfortunately, over the last generation, we have seen a group of people get a hold of control over these characters. And as they have gained control over these characters, they have not respected the history of these characters the way a steward would. No, they are out here trying to get a hold of these characters in order to go out here and push their agenda. They believe that these characters are some sort of commercial property, and they're not really respecting the relationship that many customers have had with these characters over the years. And that's a big problem for me as I see it, because again, I understood how many kids grew up with characters in things like Transformers, G.I. Joe, Star Wars, and many other characters like at Marvel and DC. And for a lot of kids who are Gen Xers, these characters were our friends because sometimes our parents were out working, and these characters were the people we spent time with, and these characters mean something to us because they were a part of our childhood. They were, again, our friends, and we don't want to see our friends being maligned or disrespected, and we don't want to see characters who were our friends, being done dirty like this, and we don't like to see them done bad like this because they resonated with us, and they also resonated with the next generation of viewers. I mean, a lot of kids, they watched a lot of these classic shows, and some of these characters, again, they've resonated for over 30 to 40 years. Unfortunately, we've had a handful of people who all they're thinking about is try to pander to different groups, not understanding what made these characters great was the fact that they didn't go out here and pander. They just told great stories that resonated from generation to generation. And there's no need to really pander to anyone because pandering, as I've always seen it as a publisher myself, that's coming from a position of weakness. It's not a person coming out of confidence. It's not a person coming from a place of believing in the material. And what we have in your mediums like pop culture are a group of people who really they don't believe in the material. And what they want to do is they want to create pop culture, but they don't have the confidence to go out here and create their own characters in pop culture. So what they try to do is they try to come out here and piggyback on the popularity of other characters. And as they're piggybacking on the popularity of other characters, they're hoping their ideas and their stories will become popular. Unfortunately, that approach to storytelling does not make your characters popular because nobody follows somebody who has no confidence in themselves and does not believe in their own story. If you don't believe in your story, how can you ask somebody else to believe in it? That's a critical question I would love to ask all of the social justice warriors and the woke types who are currently in control of the pop culture, like your comic books, your science fiction, your fantasy. How can you ask me to believe your character is popular when you don't really believe in yourself? I mean, what made things like Star Wars an international phenomenon was the passion that George Lucas had for his story. He believed in his story when no other people believed in his story, and he went out here and persevered in the face of adversity to get Star Wars made. Same thing with many other characters that became popular in the 70s and the 80s. When I was growing up, I remember when people were not really interested in watching many of these shows, but kids like myself growing up, we grew up with these characters and we believed in those characters because the creators believed in their story. And if you don't believe in your story, you can't ask somebody else to do that. I mean, if I go out here and promote books like Isis or John Haynes and Easting, I go out here because I believe in these stories. And again, I take money. I used to take my own money, but I get donations from viewers. And again, I use that to pay for the covers for books like Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, Cancel Vacation, and Taking Care of Business because I believe in the material and I believe in the stories. And if you don't believe in your stories, you can't ask the customer to go out here and buy it. And that's one of the problems that we're having with these social justice types. They want to come out here, they want to jump on the back of a popular character, and what they want to do is try to rocket themselves to fame by going out here and creating some sort of controversy as related to this old character by stirring up a whole lot of strife among the fans. But that doesn't really make the viewer or the reader care. And that's a critical question that every creator like myself asks before I even put fingers to the keyboard for a book like one of these. Why should we care? Why should my readers care if I go out here and promote, publish this work? I mean, that's one of the things I ask myself, and that's not a question many of these people who are a part of the pop culture go out here and ask. Why should the reader care? Because they don't really care about the reader. All they want to do is try to get themselves on a fast track to fame by going out here and taking an once a very popular character with a lot of people and then trying to use that character as a springboard to push themselves to another level of popularity. And that's not, again, what a creative person goes out here and does. No, a creative person who really has a passion for storytelling, they go out here and they create their own characters, they create their own stories, and even when they're out here, they believe in their work, even when other people don't believe in them, and they keep pushing and persevering in the face of all of that adversity, and that is how they become part of pop culture. Because it's not the um it's not the character that it becomes as the character becomes popular, and it becomes popular because people again go out here and they have the courage to go out here in the face of all of that adversity. And if their stories resonate with people, what happens is they go out here and buy those characters. But these new types of people, these woke types, they don't have the courage to go out here and persevere. So they're looking to try to get an easy way to popularity. So what they do is they go out here and they try to use an identity to try to get themselves somewhere, or they try to pull a stunt, like in the case of Masters of the Universe Revelation, where they try to go out here and they, as I see it, completely bait and switched people on Masters of the Universe Revelation. Fans were out here looking for a He-Man story that was in the spirit of the Filmation animated series or the 2003 animated series. And instead of giving those customers who were loyal to these characters for over 30 years a He-Man story that stayed true to the Filmation cartoon, what they did was Kevin Smith went out here and bait and switched people, talking about how we were going to get a He-Man story, but instead we got a Teela story, and we got the characters of He-Man and his lore practically discarded, all because Kevin Smith wanted to push an agenda of feminism at the expense of a character that was originally created by Mattel Toys to appeal to boys. And again, that is disrespectful to all of those fans of He-Man. I mean, I remember as a kid watching He-Man and the Masters of the Universe on Channel 5 here in New York before it became Fox 5. And I remember it coming on, I think, about 3 o'clock, 3:30. And when you talk about this cartoon, again, it meant a lot of things to people. I mean, kids back in the 80s loved this cartoon. And instead of giving us a cartoon that paid homage to the 80s animated series, what your Kevin Smith did on Netflix was he went out here and he gave us a cartoon to push his ideas of strong women. And if your Kevin Smith wanted to go out here and make an animated series, I say go out here and make an animated series about a strong heroine. Don't come out here and take He-Man, which is meant to appeal to young boys and teach them that they have power, and turn it into something that is about pushing some sort of gynocentric agenda. That is again disrespectful to all of those fans, and that is not what a responsible steward goes out here and does. No, a responsible steward is someone like myself who would go out here and respect that material, and they would be sitting there before they even wrote any of their stories, watching every episode on the DVD to pick up everything in the series before starting their own run. I mean, if you are a writer, you really want to, and you really love these characters, you want to make sure that these characters stay true to who they are, so that people of the next generation can see what's great about them and see what's great about their stories. And that's something I haven't seen with a lot of these creators out here. No, like your Kevin Smith, they don't take responsibility. What they do is want to push their own ideas at the expense of characters like He-Man. And when I think about that whole She-Ra, I don't know what that abomination was. That was completely, again, another disrespect at the character of She-Ra, because the She-Ra character was just a clown. What they presented was a complete clown show. And again, when I look at Masters of the Universe Revelation, what really upset me is you're going to talk about Teela being strong, but we had a She-Ra show which was designed to appeal as related to what made girls strong. I mean, He-Man was a one type of show that was action and adventure, and She-Ra appealed with a more fantasy type theme. I mean, when I looked at both shows, and I have seen both shows, they appealed to what appealed to both the strengths of both boys and girls. I mean, boys like action and adventure, and that's why they watch He-Man, whereas girls like world building and they like story building, and that was a core element and theme of the She-Ra series. That was one of the things that made each series distinct, and it was one of the things that made each series resonate with the viewer. And I remember watching them when they used to have them on the PAX network, or what they call Ion Life. I mean, I used to watch them as part of the Night Owl, and that's when I really started to appreciate the differences between Masters of the Universe and She-Ra Princess of Power. And there's a major, again, difference as related to the story paradigms. And I didn't see that respect given to either show on Netflix. All I've seen is just them trying to call themselves trying to push their own agendas, and they're trying to go out here and minimize the man on He-Man, and then they're going to try to masculinize She-Ra. And again, that's not what these characters are all about. And we're not even focusing on anything as related to their stories. And that's the thing that upsets me the most, because again, a creator who is a good steward wants to go out here and preserve everything that is important about these stories, about these characters, and try to pay homage to what happened in the original stories while going out here and creating new stories, and even going out here and taking elements from existing stories to go out here and create new stories. That was one of the things that I learned growing up reading comics, and it's one of the things that I go out here and do on many of my books on the SJS Direct imprint. For example, in order for me to do a book like the John Haynes series, I had to start out with a novel called The Temptation of John Haynes. So I had to have stories to build existing stories on. So I understand if you want to go out here and take these characters as a steward and you want to create new stories, you have to go to the existing lore of these characters to go out here and make these characters resonate with the next generation. And that was something that I saw fail miserably with Star Wars. And when I look at Star Wars, I mean, that's another case of them not respecting the lore of what came before. Instead of going out here and seeing where to take a new trilogy from existing material, we had a whole Star Wars new trilogy that was all based on identity politics. What they wanted to do was create this female Jedi and then have this be the third trilogy. Now, if I were doing a third trilogy, it would be more focused on creating the new Republic, and it would be a conflict between those trying to build the new Republic out of the ashes of the fall of the Empire, and this new Republic trying to rise in the face of things that happened in Return of the Jedi. Because with the Empire fallen, there's a lot of great stories as related to Star Wars. Unfortunately, because you had Kathleen Kennedy more focused on trying to create a strong woman, we didn't get to see that story focusing on things that people cared about Star Wars. I mean, with the fall of the Empire, the Luke starting the Jedi Order over again, there was a lot of great storytelling to be told. Unfortunately, there was not a good steward in charge of the lore to go out here and focus on those story points. When you have a good steward in charge, what they are going to do is pick out those core story points that are part of the old story, and then use those elements to create new elements for their new story. I mean, this is something that I had to do on this book, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. I mean, this story came out of a story I did called Isis, the Beauty Myth. And then there was another story I did to follow it up called Isis, Wrath of the Cyber Goddess. And this was the third and concluding story of the Cyber Goddess saga. So in order to go out here and do a story, you have to have a foundation, and then you have to pick your story points. And then when you pick your story points, you use them to build your new story on what happened in existing stories. And that's what a steward does when they're out here with characters, and they understand that if I want to do a story, I need to pick story elements that came from the original story and then use those to build my new story, and then go out here and as I'm creating my new characters, then have those new characters interacting with the old characters in a way that connects the old generation with the new generation and makes the material fresh. And that was the opportunity that was missed with Star Wars, because I saw where they could go with the story, with where the war is over, and we're starting to try to build this new government. We have people still loyal to the empire, and there's still conflict going on, and how it would relate to what would happen in the aftermath of a war. Because when you have an aftermath of a war, you still have people who are still benefiting from the old regime, and they're still wanting to be a part of the old regime. And then you have people who want to be a part start working on the new regime. So there was a lot they could have done as related to Star Wars, and you could have tied it in to Luke and bringing balance to the Force, and it all could have created a very fantastic story. Unfortunately, those in charge of Star Wars didn't really appreciate the lore. They didn't appreciate the story, because what they did, the first thing they did that what I saw was disrespectful, was go out here and ignore the expanded universe novels, which gave you several characters that were definitely could have been there, like Mara Jade definitely needed to have been in the trilogy. And there needed to be other characters from those books in that whole new trilogy. Unfortunately, because they decided they're not going to go out here and respect the lore, they decided to create characters like Rey and Finn that never connected with the readers, and there was no respect for the material, and that didn't make all the veteran fans of Star Wars care, and it didn't make new fans want to respect anything about it. So I mean, Stranger makes a good point. Kathleen Kennedy said they had zero material, but yeah, there was a lot of material out there. Expanded universe. There were the Dark Forces games. I mean, so much material out there. And Supremo makes a good point. Yeah, the Empire. It would have disintegrated into factions like we saw with the Balkans War in the '90s between the fall of Yugoslavia and how some of them wanted to go in different directions. And that's something that I know would have done. Mobar asks a question. He says, how do you keep the readers of SJS Direct catalog interested in the characters, Brother Sean? What is the formula of why should we care?" Now, how I answer the question of why should you care is I go out here and I ask that question of myself. And so when I was doing Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, I said that readers wanted to find out what happened to Rahima and the Cyber Goddess, and that's why I did Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. And I wanted to finish the transformation arc as related to the character of Isis and her actualizing her potential. So when I asked the question of why should we care, I said you should care because we're going to see the Isis character actualize her potential that was started with the beauty myth, where she had some self-image and self-esteem issues. And Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, we started to see her dealing with these confidence issues. And in this story, we see the character actualize her potential. So when I'm doing SJS Direct books, I oftentimes ask these questions of why should you care? Because there's story points as related to the character that you're starting to see them develop, you're starting to see them change, and you care because you want to see this character grow and you want to see this character overcome these obstacles so that they can grow into a stronger character. So that's something that I try to do with books like, again, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess, or in the story of Cancelication, the Eastine character is dealing with cancel culture and trying to overcome her issues as related to being canceled by a social media mob. So the whole thing with this story was she was trying to deal with all the emotional issues, because a lot of people, once they have to deal with the cancel culture mob, they have to deal with all of this fear and insecurity. So there's a lot of different elements that are related to a story. And again, a steward, when they're out here, they're thinking about picking those story points that allow you to see this character grow, see this character change, and see this character transform in front of you as they deal with overcoming the obstacles. And we don't see that with things like Star Wars. We don't see that with things like many of your things like Masters of the Universe. Instead of giving us character development, what they do is they go out here and focus on identity, thinking that, oh, we need a black character, we need an alphabet character, we need a woman. And that's not what people came here for. No, they want to see these characters going out here taking on the bad guys, and as they're taking on the bad guys, overcoming whatever challenges are in front of them. And we don't get to see that because people want to come out here and they want to make these characters fit their agenda. Error 404, I have been writing ever since I was 9 years old, and I've been writing books ever since 1994. So it's been about, I think, 27 years I've been writing books for the last 27 years. I mean, I've been writing for a long time, and I got into writing because I wanted to do comics. And again, these characters mean a lot to me because I grew up with these characters, and since I couldn't work with those characters, I started working on my own. And I learned all about the craft of storytelling. I've read books like Sid Field's Screenplay and Robert McKee's Story, and I understand how to do stories in a 3-act paradigm on comics, and I know how to do screenplays. I mean, I know how to write novels, all of these different story models, and that's why it just disappoints me when I don't see, good stewards to storytelling, because this has been my passion ever since I was a kid. I wanted to see these characters preserved for the next generation, and I wanted to see them, done right. It's like when I look at the new Wonder Woman and how they're talking about bringing in another alphabet character that doesn't even fit into the Wonder Woman lore. I mean, you can't put this there because according to your Wonder Woman lore, if a man steps on Paradise Island, he will wind up killing all of the Amazons. So that point that your Vita Ayala put in, really, it just runs against everything that the character is. But she's going to put that there because she wants to get brownie points with people as related to politics. But that's not what a steward does. A steward understands that Paradise Island was an island made for women, and it was a place that women stayed. And again, the rule was if a man set foot on Paradise Island, it would just lead to the destruction of Paradise Island. So clearly, your Vita Ayala doesn't do her research. And that's another problem with the woke types is they want to go out here and tell stories with characters that they piggyback on, but they don't do any research into the character's history or the character's backstory. And because they don't sit down and go out here and watch the DVDs or read the runs of the stories, it really shows how it's about their feelings and not about going out here and telling the best story possible. So I understand where a lot of fans are upset about what's happened with Wonder Woman and why they're upset with Jonathan Kent, because these characters, they're being out here ruined by these creators who want to go out here and they're being ruined by these creators, these so-called creators, who again, they just want to piggyback on the popularity of these characters. They want to go out here and generate a little controversy that will get their name out here as related to being featured in an article on the Hollywood Reporter or your Variety or whatever news that's out there that's mainstream. And after they get that announcement that Superman is bisexual or Robin is bisexual or Wonder Woman is they're a trans on Paradise Island, they don't care about these characters. They don't care about the history they're messing up, and they don't care about what the damage that they're doing because they're not good stewards, and what they're doing is making a mess, and that mess is something a guy who cares about the craft, they have to spend time cleaning up that mess, and it becomes hard to clean up because these people go out here and do irreparable damage with their stories. They're thinking, oh, I'm going to have my diversity, so-called diversity. It's not really diversity because there was already diversity in a lot of these stories. There were already diverse characters in those stories. I mean, when I look at your Wonder Woman, they already had a diversity of women already there on Paradise Island. So there was no need to go out here and try to introduce elements that did not belong there. It's just you trying to get brownie points and trying to get popularity in the mainstream by, again, piggybacking on popular characters and not going out here and doing the work that creators like myself go out here and do. Now, creators like myself, we sit there and we can take an, again, existing character and show you a different side of that character, and that character will connect with the reader. I mean, when I look at the Nubia character has always been there. I mean, you have a character you could already tell stories with, but your social justice types, they don't want to go out here and do the work as related to researching the Nubia character, and they don't want to go out here and do check the backstory and build a new story using the existing character. What they want to do is go out here and create avatar characters, like some people call them Mary Sues and Gary Stews, and they'll have that self-insert character be a part of the story, and that's a sign of bad writing. I mean, if you want a sign of bad writing is creating your own insert character and putting them into another person's story, I mean, that's just really bad writing, and it just shows you have no skill as a writer. I mean, part of writing a character is going out here and creating characters that we can relate to, not trying to create your own escapist fantasy where you go out here and create your own characters and try to make it where yourself is in a story that they don't belong. Papyrus asked a question that I definitely want to answer. Do you ever consider writing crossover stories involving Mad Matilda and Isis meeting up, Mr. Sean? Well, I have pondered doing a Spinsterella Isis crossover. It's something that I have thought about doing. I was going to call it Goth Goddess, and it was going to be a crossover similar to Isis All About the Goddess, where Isis met the Marilyn Marie character from All About Marilyn. And I thought about doing that kind of story. I mean, Spinsterella has made appearances in Eternal Night, so she's a part of the SJS Direct universe. And I thought about bringing Spinsterella into an Isis story. So you can check out Isis's first crossover, Isis All About the Goddess, on Amazon.com. That was one of the books that people really liked. That was the first crossover I did with Isis and another character from another book. And people really liked it because I stayed true to the story points that were in All About Marilyn, and I further moved the character forward as related to her story in the aftermath of All About Marilyn, and I moved the Isis character forward. And that's something, again, a good steward of storytelling does. They respect their past stories, and then they go out here and create a new story, again, using those existing story points, because when you're writing good stories, you can go out here and pick those story points and create that new story. I mean, when I look at different toy lines that have done this, like Transformers Alternators, I have a lot of those, and that was another example of an update done right. I mean, that in 2003's He-Man, they both showed respect for the work of other creators. Same thing with Beast Wars in the 90s. I mean, it is possible to stay true to these characters and then move their story forward. I mean, Beast Wars back in the 90s did a fantastic job of taking us back to G1 Transformers, especially in season 3, I believe, and last part of season 2. I mean, they brought us the G1 Transformers, and they stayed true to what the G1 Transformers were, but then still told a great story with Beast Wars. And same thing with the Transformers Alternators. They did a great job of staying true to Transformers, and they stayed true to Transformers G1 while giving us updated versions of those G1 Transformers. And that was one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite toy lines. And I wound up getting a lot of those because I really love the way they just stayed true to it. And I also like what they did with the new G.I. Joe Classified line, how they're staying true to the characters in G.I. Joe and still updating the character and keeping them true to who they were, and then going out here and giving us fresh designs on those characters that allows a new generation to discover what's great about those characters. I mean, that's all what good story stewards do as related to storytelling. They want to be able to keep these characters resonating with the next generation. So what they do is they respect the material, they respect the characters, and when you do that, you're going to have success like they're having on the G.I. Joe Classified line, where they practically can't keep these figures in the store, and you have people out here looking at the Targets practically every day for things like the Cobra Island line, and they're just looking for these figures because it takes you back to what was great about those 3 3/4 figures, but you get the updated articulation and the updated scale of today. And that's something that made the G.I. Joe Classified line resonate with people when they saw it come out last year. And it's something that people see when they're out here. That's how you get them into these characters. I mean, these characters resonated from one generation, and they need to be protected and preserved for that next generation. But you have, again, people in the entertainment industry who are not showing that respect to these characters, not showing that respect to their stories. And again, they don't want to go out here and go through the hardship of having their characters criticized and derided. I mean, when I go out here with a character like Isis, I mean, I had feminists coming at me when I first started this book series, and I didn't have the money to do covers. I mean, I was getting attacked left and right. Hoteps were attacking me. So I understand what it is to go out here and create a brand new character and take them to the marketplace, but you have to persevere in the face of adversity, and you have to persevere in the face of criticism, because if you're going to go out here and you're going to create a new character, you're going to wind up dealing with a lot of people who may not know your character, and then you have people who they get angry and they just don't like your character. But you have to go out here and keep persevering, because that's the only way you're going to get the readers. It's the only way you're going to get the fans, and that's something you have to do. I mean, on the character of John Haynes, I did deal with the same thing, and now I've got people who are with both books. A lot of kids picking them up, a lot of people picking them up. So it takes time to get to that level. But a lot of those people, the woke types, they don't want to go through what I went through for the last 10 years on the SJS Direct imprint, dealing with a lot of criticism, dealing with a lot of attacks. They don't want to go out here and put in that work. They don't want to build up that thick skin. No, what they want to do is go out here and create the alphabet Superman and think that, oh, I'm going to go out here and get popular overnight. And I'm sorry, it's not going to work like that. Just because you made your Jonathan Kemp what you want to be, that's not going to make the character popular. No, if you want to go out here and create an alphabet character, you're going to have to create that original alphabet character. You're going to have to go through those long years of slow sales. You're going to have to go through the long years of people criticizing you, and you're going to have to go through that pain. But these guys don't want to go through that kind of pain. So what they want to do is put all of these fans out here through that kind of pain as they try to push their agendas out here and push their politics on these characters, because they don't have the courage to go out here and create their own characters. Rashana, thank you for the super chat. She had a request for a video subject I definitely want to do, and that is talking about how to write a children's book. And I can definitely write about that, because I write many books that kids love, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and the John Haynes series. And it's something I'm definitely going to talk about in depth in a video. And I'm definitely going to do that next week, because I write most of my stories for all ages, and I try to write them in a way that resonates with the reader. So that's what I try to do with the SJS Direct Universe books, is I try to make it very family friendly. Kabulish, I think that Zack Snyder, I'm not a fan of his take on the Justice League. It's very dark and it's very grim, and that's not really what DC heroes are all about. I mean, DC heroes are bright, they're optimistic, they're friendly, and that's something your Dan Didio, he was not really a good steward over as related to DC, staying true to the spirit of what DC was. He wanted to go darker and angrier, but that's not DC heroes. DC heroes are paragons of virtue. They are of high moral standard. They are about ideals. And when you're dealing with a DC character, they are not these gritty, angry characters. They are characters who stand for what they believe is right. So a lot of people don't understand that what DC is all about. They don't understand that DC is, in contrast to Marvel, Marvel is a more grittier, more realistic world, whereas DC is a little bit more idealized. So again, when you read the comics and study the lore, as a steward, you want to make sure you stay true to that material, because that's what's going to appeal to your core audience. So, yeah, Gabriel makes a good point. Dan Didio was a very Watchmen obsessed guy, but he didn't understand Watchmen was not meant to be a standard for comics. Alan Moore, when he was doing Watchmen, what he was trying to do was say, this is not what a superhero is. This is not what superheroes are supposed to be. This is not how superheroes are supposed to act. I mean, after I read the Watchmen comic and I watched the Watchmen movie, I looked at it and I said to myself, this is not superheroes. These characters have no ethics, they have no moral compass, they have no sense of any sort of morality, and that's not what a superhero is. Again, people they really misinterpret Alan Moore's Watchmen, but when you read Watchmen and you're somebody who understands the lore, you you just can't sit there and say Watchmen is a model like Dark Knight Returns. A lot of people want that they don't understand this is not a superhero story. Superheroes are about the people who want to serve the community. They want to help people out. They want to do the right thing. I mean, that's a superhero. That's not what people don't really get what superheroes are. I mean, there are people who understand that. Look, I'm a volunteer trying to help out in the community, and that's not what's. I mean, people don't really understand what that is. They don't understand. They're just decent folks trying to help people out. And oh, I'm happy to hear that, Papyrus. That you have over 30 books in the SJS Direct catalog. I mean, that is awesome. I mean, you have almost all you have a lot of books in the SJS Direct imprint, and I'm really appreciate you supporting my work. And I'm going to keep trying to put great work out there for readers like you. Let's get the likes up. I don't even know how many likes are up because I'm watching this from StreamYard and I'm not watching this from. Got 19 likes, so 19 likes is really good for the room of 29. So I really, again, thank you, Papyrus, for picking up work on the SJS Direct imprint. And yeah, Stranger Act's a good question. He said, should you make books for all audiences before trying to do something more adult and dark to show you have variety? Well, when I first started out doing ISIS, I was doing books for all audiences. And then I did a romance novel called Cassandra Cookbook, which became a recipe for success. And that was a little bit more adult, but I still kept it PG. And then I went to Temptation of John Haynes, which is a little darker, and that showed a little bit of range. But the whole thing is, I kept it in a way. I wrote it in a way that it's kept it for all audiences, but it was just like I just varied different themes. So I showed variety, but I didn't really get too into the what people call the R-rated zone with foul language and graphic sex scenes until I started doing the novel Spinsterella. That one was my first attempt at doing a bit more of a adult themed book, but usually most of my books are PG 13, and you can explore a lot of different material and still keep it all audiences. I mean, books like Temptation of John Haynes are safe for all ages. Books like the ISIS series are safe. I could say Recipe for Success is PG 13. Spellbound is like PG 13 towards an R. And I try to keep it mid-range, but I can still show a lot of range. And again, that's all about the writer having skill. And as a steward, when you're a writer, you understand that it's your skills that are going to keep these characters true to themselves. And again, you can explore material that's brand new, but you can still stay in that range. So what do I think about Frank Miller's take on Batman? I'm not. I'm all right with year one. I mean, year one wasn't too bad. With Batman, I like Frank Miller's Daredevil a bit more than his Batman. Kept bullish. I mean, Frank Miller's Daredevil was a lot tighter than his Batman. I did see some of those trailers, Supremo, for the upcoming DCU movies, and some of them look good. Like the Batman looks really good. Black Adam looks really good. I mean, I have no complaints about many of those movies. They're extremely well done, and they're getting me interested. Especially the Batman one is getting me interested. Um, it really looks like Neil Adams on screen. So yeah, Gabriel is right. Yeah, Frank Miller's Daredevil is way better than his Batman. I have to say his Daredevil, I mean, redefined the character. So if you guys want to see me do more streams, you guys can hit the Cash App. It's greatly appreciated. That helps me stay on the air. So if you guys can drop dollar on the Cash App or pick up some of the books, again, that would be greatly appreciated. The stream's not over yet. Still talking about the stewardship. because Retroblasting made a great point, and it's one I agree with. We really do need stewards over these characters. We need people over these characters who have grown to love these characters, who have a passion for these characters, and will protect these characters from the excesses of really bad types out here who want to push agenda and want to go out here and push their politics. So it's not about your politics when you're creating when you're creating a story for an existing character. It's about you respecting what came before you and respecting the work of those who created before you. And that's goes back to another principle that I learned as a follower of God, and that is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, as a guy who's created his own characters, I wouldn't want somebody taking my characters and changing them to fit their agenda. So I'm going to respect the work of another creator by not disrespecting that creator and their work. So I'm going to, if I get to work with somebody else's characters, I want to respect the work that those creators go out here and do on those characters, because I know that those characters have an audience. I know that those characters have readers. I know that those characters have a history. And if I'm going to work with those characters, I'm going to pull elements from their history and use those elements to tell my new story. So that's something I really want to do as related to my approach to storytelling, because as a steward, I understand that I want people to not only read my new story, I want them to go back and check out those old stories, because there's a reason why those old stories resonated with readers, and you want them to go back and see, oh, wait a minute, that old show had some resonance to today, and you want them to go back and see where the root of that story comes from. That's something that I really believe in as a writer, is you really want to respect other people's material. You want to respect other people's work. I mean, people worked hard on these stories. And again, kids grew up with these characters, and you want to treat those characters with the respect that they deserve. I mean, if you don't want to respect those characters, you should not be in this business. And if you cannot sit here and do things like I have done, like sitting there and watching all of the episodes of a show so I can get a sense of that kind of character, or sitting there and reading all of the books so that I can get a sense of this character or their voice, then you really should not be in this business. And sadly, in the comic book business, the sci-fi business, and the fantasy business, we've got a lot of people in the business who really should not be here, and they're just in here destroying histories of these characters and making a complete mess. And then what's really troubling to me is these same people want to get upset when people go out here and criticize them, but you're out here destroying what many other people worked hard on and what many kids grew up with. And that's something that as I see it, it just makes me shake my head, because I grew up wanting to do this and wanting to be that kind of steward, that guy who looks at these characters and says, I need to take responsibility for these characters, protect them from excesses, and make sure that, yes, you want to do new and different things, but the new and different things have to respect what came before it. And when you're out here, you have to understand that in order to move this character forward, you have to understand where they came from, and you have to understand why this character resonates with the reader and the viewer. You have to understand there's something there that connects the reader to them, or the viewer to them. And those things, again, have nothing to do with identity politics or social justice. This is about what's core to the character. and what's core to the character's history and what's core to who they are. I mean, that's something that I don't see respected by your woke types who go out here and do things like Masters of the Universe Revelation or that sequel trilogy, that abomination to Star Wars, or things like the She-Ra series that came on Netflix. I mean, these are the kind of things that drive people away from a character, and it makes people, instead of them saying, "Oh, that's an awesome character," they start saying, "Oh, that's Dad's character," or "That's somebody else's character." I mean, if you don't, again, like the woke types, they don't have the courage to go out here and get their existing, make their own new characters like I do, and take that heat. But what they do winds up hurting a lot of these characters, and it winds up alienating people from characters that people grew up with, people connected with, and people could connect with if you just went out here and showed them done right. Yeah, I mean, if you went out here and respected those characters, you could get kids to pick up a He-Man. You could get them to pick up Transformers. I mean, kids love these characters because of the stories that were told about them: good versus evil, good guys versus bad guys, action and adventure. There's a reason why these characters have resonated for over 30 years. But what happens is you get a handful of people who are in charge who want to tell a story that fits their agenda but does not really resonate with the reader. Yeah, I've not forgotten Ghostbusters 2016, because Real Ghostbusters, again, that was a major influence on me for writing Temptation of John Haynes D. Wood. I mean, Ghostbusters 2016 was an insult, and I'm hoping that Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I'm thinking that that movie is going to be a lot better because it really pays respect to Harold Ramis and Ivan Reitman created back with Ghostbusters in '84, and I really I'm hoping that Ghostbusters Afterlife really shows respect to what came before it, and that's something that I really am hoping that happens with Ghostbusters 2021, because 2016 was all about feminism, and that's not what Ghostbusters is all about. Ghostbusters was a comedy about these guys who were out here. They were out here doing a supernatural hustle. I mean, Venkman was doing a supernatural hustle. Egon Spengler was the straight man in Race Dance, and Winston Vetmore was all along for the ride. And then they found out that ghostbusting was actually true, and that was the whole joke with Ghostbusters. But it caught on because they had a great concept and they believed in it. I mean, most people didn't believe in going out here and with Ghostbusters. Again, that was another movie that nobody really believed in. But then it took off because the audience, it resonated with them. And I remember back in the '80s, again being a kid, that was one of the big movies of the '80s, and it was because they just gave us a great story. Mopar 7170 asks, how would a writer reach a broader audience without compromising stories and character history? Well, it's very easy to reach a broader audience, and that is to just tell your story and believe in your story. I mean, I have reached readers all over the world with different stories, and I do that by just believing in my story and going out here and writing the best story I can possibly write. I mean, that's how you reach that broader audience. Again, it's not going to happen overnight. Not everybody's going to be a J.K. Rowling or a Stephanie Meyer. I mean, it's going to take years for you to start connecting with an audience. I mean, Temptation of John Haynes came out in 2011, and John Haynes is just starting to find a little bit of footing right now. So it takes some time for a character to connect with the reader. It takes time to reach that larger audience. I mean, some books I'll do will resonate with people faster than others, but it's going to take time, man. You don't have to compromise your story's integrity and character history to reach that audience. All you need to do is just believe in your story. Um, Kabilish Pakler asks, what do I think about Alex Ross's art? I like Alex Ross's art, and it's very dynamic. I would love to have had worked with him. Unfortunately, he hasn't been He blew me off once, so I like his art, but I don't know if I ever get a chance to work with him. So, but I'm working with other great artists out here like Antonio Balderi, who's doing a fantastic job on the John Haynes at Death Store comic, and that is something that I hope to have out on Kickstarter soon. Supremo asks, "What are my thoughts on fan service?" I don't really like the term fan service because it's not paying service to the fans, it's paying homage to the past material. And for me, it's about showing respect for who came before you. It's not, as I see it, fan service. It's about respecting the material and respecting the work of writers who came before you. So this is something that comes, the whole idea of fan service comes from a point of thinking that you own the characters, you can do whatever you want. But for me, it's not about fan service. It's about saying to the reader, I'm gonna respect who came before me, and I'm gonna respect the stories of those who put their fingers to the keyboard typewriter before me. I mean, I want to go out here and be that steward who says, "Hey, I'm responsible for this character. I'm responsible for their past, for staying true to their past, and I need to make these past ideas fresh for the future readers so that they can see what's great about these characters." So that's one of the things I believe in, and I always look at things like respecting the work that came before me. And Supremo left a good point about Ghostbusters 2016. He said it should have been a co-ed team. I mean, if you want to go in the direction of a co-ed team, I really think they should have gone with the Extreme Ghostbusters concept, because Extreme Ghostbusters, you know, it stayed true to what Ghostbusters was, but it made it fresh for the 90s. I mean, people sleep on that cartoon, but it was very well done. And you want to show respect for those who came before you, because you don't want to go out here and be like these woke types who just say, "Oh, I don't need to acknowledge anything. I'm just going to just tell a story that I want to tell, and with these characters to push my agenda, but not respect those who came before you and treat those readers the way, and those viewers with the respect that they deserve, because they sat there and they watched these shows when they weren't popular with people out here in the mainstream. I mean, kids sat there and they would watch these episodes. So I mean, you want to respect the work that came before you. You want to respect the creators who came before you. And that's all part of what a steward does. I mean, I can go out here and make a character fresh and dynamic for today while still going out here and respecting what came before me. I mean, that's something I do on the SJS Direct universe. I mean, some of my characters are 20, 30 years old, but I still make them interesting. And that's something I want to see done again with these great classic characters. And we need more stewards over these characters. We need people with passion, people with heart, people who love these characters, and people who really care about these characters. Extreme Ghostbusters was a great show. Mobar 7170. You can catch episodes of it on YouTube. It's a different Ghostbusters team, and it's just very well done. I mean, it stays true to it. So there were female Ghostbusters. I mean, that's organic. It's been ever since Janine Melnitz came on the team. I had that figure. I had two of those figures. I mean, I had the first one, and then I had the one with the little scooter. I mean, Janine has been a part of the Ghostbusters team, and female Ghostbusters have been a part of the team for years. But the whole all-female squad, it was all about feminism and identity politics. But anybody who watched the animated show knows that Janine was wearing a pink Ghostbusters jumpsuit, and she was even had storylines in Real Ghostbusters for multiple seasons. So she was a major character on there. But according to the people with Ghostbusters 2016, oh, the women are not being represented. But Janine was represented regularly on the Ghostbusters show. And all you do is go to watch Real Ghostbusters on YouTube or pick up the DVDs, and you'll see that she had several episodes. She had a storyline with her chasing Egon Spangler, and that's all been done, and that's why Ghostbusters 2016 was a major insult to many Ghostbusters fans like myself, because we know that Janine had always been a core character in Ghostbusters, and there was no need to go with this all-female Ghostbusters all with all of this. Well, Brie Larson is a robot. That's why she ruined the MCU, and her character had no story. Cat Splish. She's just boring. I mean, I watched Captain Marvel last week, and it was like Brie Larson was like watching Ultron. I mean, Ultron had more personality than she did. She's stoic and stiff. She has no personality, no voice, and that's why people really don't like Brie Larson. I mean, she's just the Captain Marvel character is just meant to be so-called strong woman, but there's more elements to writing a heroine, and I know that from writing E-Steam and writing ISIS, that writing women is about writing characters and that relate to people, have some personality, have some voice, and women, yes, women have different ways of approaching conflict. And the problem with Captain Marvel was she was trying to be a man, and she was just a very bad character overall. So, as a guy who writes heroines, I didn't see anything interesting about that character in the movie. I mean, it was just a major disappointment overall. So, again, that's what happens when you hire a bad steward over a character. Again, they make it all about their agenda. They make it all about, oh, we need to have strong women. And again, they don't do their research, because when you're writing a heroine, it's not about making her strong. It's about making her interesting. It's about giving her a voice. It's about giving her a personality. It's about making us care about that heroine and making us connect with who she is as a person. And usually I try to make the character a friend, somebody guys want to go out here and date, or the girls want to hang out with. That's what I do in the case of characters like Isis or E-Steam or Matilda Crowley. That's what I try to do with those kind of characters, is make them friendly and relatable. And that's not something we see with many of these people who are supposed to be taking over your pop culture characters. They're not making the characters friends. They're not making them people we can connect with. They're making it all about trying to preach at people. And one of the worst things you could ever do is preach at people. I mean, when you create characters, the character is supposed to talk to the reader and resonate to the reader. You're not supposed to go out here and try to shout at them. And that's what the woke types try to do, shout their agenda at you. And people are not coming to be shouted at. They want to be, talked to and just be entertained. They want to escape and get away from their problems. And one of the big problems that the woke types do is they want to bring you an issue with these characters, but these characters were never designed to bring you an issue. I mean, in some cases, they were designed to sell product, but in most cases, they were designed to take you away from your problems, let you see the good guys beat the bad guys, and is in some cases give you action and adventure. In other cases, give you a laugh. But a lot of these people, they don't really understand these things, because a lot of them are young, inexperienced. They have tunnel vision. They don't really understand what stewardship is all about. I mean, as somebody, again, I grew up with these characters and I wanted to grow up working with these characters. So I understood I need to learn about these characters, and I need to learn about their stories, and I need to learn what's important about their stories and why readers need and viewers need to care. I mean, that's a core question with these characters that has to be answered. Why should we care? And it's hard to care about a character when a creator is all about their agenda and not helping us to see why this character is connecting with us. I mean, we connected with these characters because they were our friends. They were people we wanted to spend time with. And we don't get to see that these days, because everybody wants to talk about somebody's sexual orientation or somebody's gender or somebody's race, but that's not the content of a person's character. That's things that's related to the color of their skin and their ethnicity, but that's not who a person is at the core. What makes a person at the core, again, is the content of their character, and we want to see that content of their character as related to the substance of who they are. We want to see their personality. We want to see their voice. We want to not see their voice, but hear their voice, and we want to connect with them as people. And sadly, many of the woke types, they don't understand this about comic books. They don't understand this about fantasy. They don't understand this about science fiction. They think that comics, fantasy, and science fiction are about furthering agendas, but it's not about furthering an agenda. It's sometimes, yes, they will make social commentary on certain issues, but it's all about telling a story that relates to the reader and connects the reader to the character. That's what a good steward understands about storytelling. They understand that it's not about me going out here pushing agenda. It's about me telling a story that makes us relate to the character. For example, when I was doing this book, East Team Cancelification, yes, I wanted to make a commentary on cancel culture, but as I was making that commentary on cancel culture, I still told a story that stayed true to the East Team character, and I still stayed true to the paradigm I had set up for the East Team character, and I still went out here and told my story about where I made the commentary on cancel culture, but I also stayed true to the characters and the story. Again, it's all about believing in your story, believing in what you wrote, and not going out here and trying to ram ideas down people's throats as related to your agenda. And that's one of the things I try to do, is just tell good stories. And when I go out here and I was looking at, again, other people's characters, like the Milestone characters and many others, I want to stay true to those kind of characters because I understand that these characters mean something to many readers out there, and they want to get their stories to stay true to what they saw in the past while staying fresh in the future. So you have to respect those stories, and you have to respect the lore that came before you. And if you can't do that, as I see it, you really don't belong in this business at all, because in this business, you have to go out here and you have to give readers and viewers what they experienced in the past, and you have to stay true to the heart of that material that you're working on. Now, I'm going to get ready to wrap up tonight's stream. And again, I want to thank everybody for coming out to tonight's stream. And if you guys could donate to the Cash App, that helps me be able to make more videos and do more streams. Or you can donate to the Super Chat. That helps me to do more streams. Or you can donate to the PayPal. And again, that helps me be able to do more streams. So I'm definitely going to make that video for Rashana talking about how to write children's books next week. I have a lot of experience in that. And I definitely hope you guys come back for next week's stream. I hope you guys have a good night, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you all for coming to tonight's stream, and I hope you be there for next week's stream.